My name is Emily. My mother skipped my wedding to go on a Hawaii trip with my brother, then months later showed up at my door with a suitcase and nowhere to go. What happened next changed how I see family forever. If you've lived something similar, tell me about it in the comments. The clipboard was heavier than it needed to be. The venue coordinator held it out while asking for one last signature, the kind that confirmed chair counts and final timing. A playlist tab stayed open on my phone, paused on the song I'd picked for the walk down the aisle. Everything was on schedule, guests were seated, my name was already printed in a neat font on programs stacked by the entrance. A vibration cut through that rhythm. The screen showed my mother's name. No emojis, no build-up, just a block of text. "I'm sorry, I'm in Hawaii with your brother. This trip can't be postponed." The message had a timestamp that sat earlier than the airline update she'd forwarded that morning. I locked the phone without replying and handed the clipboard back. Someone adjusted my dress. Someone else asked if I needed water. The doors opened when they were supposed to. The seat reserved for my mother stayed empty. It wasn't dramatic. It just existed that way. A few heads turned as I reached the front. The officiant leaned closer and spoke low. "Your mom is running late?" "She's not coming." A nod. The music started. The process kept moving because that's what processes do. During the vows, another vibration. My brother and my mother filled the screen, both wearing sunglasses, ocean behind them. The caption read, "Best vacation ever with my favorite son." The timing was precise enough to feel intentional. The phone went back into my bag before the rings were exchanged. At the reception, congratulations came in clean, practiced sentences. One aunt hugged too long and whispered, "At least Hawaii has good reception." She meant nothing by it. That almost made it worse. A server removed the place card from my mother's table before dinner started, sliding it away like a mistake caught early. No one asked about it again. Speeches went on, glasses clinked, photos were taken with the empty space cropped out. An automated email arrived while guests were finding their seats. The subject line said, "Perfect attendance confirmed." It thanked us for choosing the venue and reminded us of checkout procedures. The timing was flawless. I forwarded it to myself without comment. Later, paperwork resurfaced. Final numbers, final charges. A pen waited where it always waits. While signing, a guest behind me laughed softly, explaining to someone else why my mother wasn't there. The word Hawaii landed between two numbers on the page. The pen paused mid-signature. The coordinator cleared her throat and asked if everything looked correct so far. The DJ announced the next song and checked his watch. A cousin waved from across the room, already holding up a phone. Someone asked where to drop gifts. The coordinator flipped a page on the clipboard and pointed to a line item. A credit card was requested. The terminal took longer than usual to load, spinning once, then twice, while conversation carried on nearby behind me without stopping or lowering their voices once. The messages started the next morning and didn't stop. Each one opened the same way, as if copied from a shared draft. "Your mom is really upset." That line came from cousins I barely talked to, from an aunt who lived 3 states away, from a family group chat that usually only activated for birthdays and funerals. Nobody asked how the wedding went. Nobody asked why my mother wasn't there. They asked how she was holding up. Linda's version traveled faster than mine ever could. According to her, she'd made a hard choice for her family. Mark had needed her. A mother had to show up when it mattered. The wedding had been misunderstood. Feelings had gotten hurt. Emily had taken it the wrong way. Photos from Hawaii kept appearing. Linda smiling, Mark holding a drink. Comments stacked underneath praising her for being selfless and such a good mom. Someone wrote the kids never understood sacrifices until later. Linda liked that one. At work, a time-off request had already been approved before I walked in. My manager leaned against my desk and lowered her voice. "Take what you need," she said. "I saw some of the posts. Family stuff can get messy." "Just a few days," I said. She nodded, then added, "HR asked if everything's okay. Nothing formal, just checking." Sarah waited until the office thinned out before pulling a chair closer. She didn't interrupt while I showed her the messages, the photos, the comments. When I finished, she said, "Don't argue. Save everything." "That's it?" "That's it." She pointed at my phone and asked to see the message from my mother again. Her finger hovered over the timestamp. "This came in before her flight boarded," Sarah said. "By a lot." A calendar opened. Flight details Linda had forwarded sat right there, cheerful and official. The times didn't line up. "That's not normal," Sarah said. "It doesn't mean anything yet, but it's not normal." I tried calling my mother anyway. It rang until voicemail, then a text arrived instead. It was long, carefully spaced, written like something meant to be reread. She explained how difficult the decision had been, how Mark had been struggling, how she'd raised her children to be strong, independent adults, how weddings were one day, but family lasted forever. The message ended with the same sentence she'd used before. "I did what I had to do." The phone suggested creating a new album an hour later, Family Moments. It had already selected the Hawaii photos. I closed the notification and turned the phone face down. More messages followed. Some were gentle, some weren't. A cousin asked why I'd embarrassed my mother by letting people talk. Another suggested I call her before things got worse. One person sent a screenshot of Linda's post with the caption circled, like evidence. At home, thank you cards sat half-written on the table. The return address labels were stacked neatly beside them. Linda's name was already printed on one envelope. That label went into the trash without ceremony. Sarah checked in that night. Any reply? Nothing new. Good, keep it that way. A few minutes later, a new text came through. "We need to talk soon." Another followed right after. "I could come stay with you for a bit." The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, then returned again while I watched. The screen stayed lit. The suggestion hung there, unasked questions packed into one offer. A calendar alert chimed from the corner of the screen, reminding me of a follow-up call with the venue about final invoices. I opened it, then closed it. The typing bubble vanished. "We'll figure it out," Sarah texted after I forwarded the message to her. The phone vibrated again. A location pin loaded beneath my mother's name, marking the hotel she'd tagged all week. "We should talk face-to-face," Linda wrote. "It's better that way." The phone rested on the table while the words settled. Another message began forming, stopped, then cleared. The last thing that came through was a simple thumbs-up reaction to her own text, as if to confirm it had been sent. The calendar alert chimed a second time, louder now. My hand hovered over the screen, then reached for the charger instead, plugging the phone in without responding as the notification kept pulsing, waiting to be acknowledged. The email search bar filled itself as soon as I typed my mother's name. Years of newsletters and forwarded recipes scrolled past before something older surfaced, buried between seating charts and vendor confirmations. The subject line read, "Just in case." It had arrived 3 weeks before the wedding. The message was short. Linda said she needed a small favor while things were hectic. There was an attachment, a single-page authorization allowing her temporary access to my credit card in case of an emergency. She wrote that it would probably never be used. She added that it was easier to take care of now than scramble later. At the end, she thanked me for being responsible. The signed copy sat right below it. My name was already there. The date matched. That was the part that stayed steady when everything else shifted. The trip hadn't come up suddenly. The timing of the message from Hawaii wasn't rushed or careless. It had been waiting for this form. A call went through after 3 rings. "Hi," Linda said, sounding distracted but calm. "I found the email," I said. "What email?" "The one you sent before the wedding, about the card." There was a pause, just long enough to notice. "That was nothing," she said. "It was just a backup. Families don't need paperwork for that." "It was signed," I said. "It wasn't nothing." Her tone sharpened. "You're really going to do this? Over something so small?" "It lines up with the trip," I said. "You're connecting things that don't belong together," she replied. "That's what marriage does. It makes people suspicious." The word marriage landed heavier than it should have. Linda kept going, explaining how everything had been for Mark's sake, how stress affected memory, how she didn't want to be questioned like a stranger. "This is family," she said. "We don't keep score." After the call ended, messages started arriving from people who hadn't spoken to me in months. An uncle asked if everything was okay. A cousin mentioned that Mom seemed fragile lately. Someone else wondered aloud if wedding stress had changed me. Linda called them before I did. That part was clear. Sarah's name flashed on the screen, but the call went unanswered while another text arrived. "Your mother is worried," it read. "She says you're pulling away." A photo notification popped up below it. Another beach shot, this one with drinks on a table and Mark laughing off to the side. Linda had tagged the location again. The decision to meet her came without much build-up, not because it felt right, but because it felt necessary. Some things don't move unless you stand in front of them. Keys were grabbed, the email stayed open on the phone, the attachment expanded so the signature was impossible to miss. The bank app loaded as I stepped outside. "Unusual spending detected. Please review recent activity." The alert sat there, polite and neutral, asking for confirmation while the car unlocked. The timing would have been funny if it hadn't been exact. A message from Sarah came through while the engine turned over. "Call me before you go." The screen went dark as the car pulled into traffic. The drive blurred into turns and red lights. The phone buzzed again in the cup holder. Another missed call. Then another. Linda's place came into view sooner than expected. The parking lot was half full. No sign of Mark's car. The phone lit up once more. Sarah's name again, followed by a short text preview that cut off mid-sentence. "Check the charge." The car rolled forward. The call dropped to voicemail as the engine idled. A door opened ahead and Linda stepped out, already talking, already waving as if everything had been decided before I arrived. The card declined before the explanation arrived. A notification blinked at the top of the screen while the payment window froze, then reset. I tried again. Slower this time, checking each field. Same result. The amount wasn't unusual. The timing wasn't rushed. The system simply refused to move forward. Customer support confirmed it a minute later. "The account is temporarily restricted due to recent activity," the representative said. Recent activity where? Hawaii. The word landed with a dull finality. The charge I'd scheduled weeks ago had to be postponed. A confirmation email arrived immediately after, cheerful and apologetic at once, promising to notify all parties of the delay. Linda didn't wait long to use it. By that afternoon, a group message lit up with concern. Linda explained that she was worried about me. She said the card issue showed I wasn't managing things well. She framed it as care. She always did. "She's under a lot of stress," Linda wrote. "I don't think she's thinking clearly." Someone asked what had happened. Linda replied with a screenshot of the bank alert, cropped to remove her name. The implication settled quickly. Silence followed, then agreement. A relative who'd promised to help with an upcoming expense sent a short message soon after. "We talked to a lawyer," it said. "It's better if we step back." No further explanation came. The help was gone. Linda called while I was still staring at the screen. "I told them so they wouldn't worry," she said. "They needed context." "That wasn't context," I said. "That was my account." "You signed the authorization," she replied. "You agreed I could handle things if needed." She forwarded the document before I could respond. The same single-page form. My signature clean and centered. The date impossible to argue with. "I didn't do anything wrong," Linda said. "I used what you gave me." The call ended without resolution. Another followed from an aunt asking if I needed budgeting advice. Someone else suggested counseling. The messages stacked without pause. Sarah called that evening. She didn't interrupt. She waited until the last notification cleared. "This is the pattern," she said. "Urgency, isolation, paperwork." "There's nothing I can do," I said. "There is," she replied, "just not the thing you want to do." The next attempt to meet Linda was scheduled for the following day, a neutral place, public, calm. That was the plan. It didn't happen. A text arrived an hour before. "Let's reschedule," Linda wrote. "Things feel too tense right now." The implication was clear. She controlled the temperature. She decided when the room was safe. I canceled without replying and opened the laptop instead. The cursor blinked on a blank page while notifications continued to arrive on the phone beside it. The bank sent another message, this one more formal. A reference number sat at the top, followed by a brief explanation of next steps. The language was flat. The process was moving. A new document opened. The reference number became the title. Nothing else went on the page yet. The phone buzzed again, another call from Linda. It went unanswered while the cursor waited, patient and indifferent, as the first line began to take shape. Messages kept coming in waves, never overlapping, always spaced just enough to feel coordinated. One cousin asked if I'd considered letting Linda manage finances for a while. Another wondered aloud if marriage had changed priorities. An email from the bank clarified the restriction in careful language. A review was pending. Certain functions would remain unavailable. Sarah sent a single line. "Stop responding." The bank reference number sat open on the laptop, stark against the white page. The cursor moved to the next line. Dates went in first. Times followed. Copies of messages dropped into place. The document grew while the phone kept buzzing beside it, unanswered. Work messages slipped in between family ones. Accounting asked about a delayed payment. A calendar reminder warned about a deadline that wouldn't move. None of it waited for explanations. Linda sent another voicemail, slower this time, explaining how concerned everyone had become, how silence looked like avoidance. The wording stayed careful. No accusations, just worry. Sarah called again. "She's narrating," she said. "You don't need to." The cursor paused, then continued. Each entry stayed factual. No adjectives, no conclusions. The page filled steadily as the phone vibrated again beside the keyboard, unanswered, while the document took shape. Another voicemail arrived and joined the others. The laptop fan hummed as files attached one by one. The cursor kept moving, line after line, while the phone lit up again and went dark. The reference number stayed at the top, unchanged, as the next line began forming beneath it. The keyboard clicked steadily, refusing every call that followed, until the screen filled, slowly. The house was almost empty. Boxes lined the walls with their flaps folded down, labeled in marker, and stacked where furniture used to be. The dining table was gone. The couch had already been picked up. What remained was a folding chair in the middle of the living room and a mug I kept forgetting to throw away. The paperwork for the sale sat on the counter, clipped and organized, waiting for signatures that were already scheduled. Everything was moving, even if it didn't feel like it. What finally settled wasn't anger about money. That part had been loud enough already. What stayed was something quieter and heavier. The realization that staying silent had always been my contribution. Not to peace, but to convenience. Linda never had to push hard. She asked small. She framed everything as temporary, a favor, a bridge, a moment. When something felt off, the explanation arrived quickly. "You understand," she'd say. "You're the strong one." That phrase came back more than anything else while sitting there. It explained why forms had been signed without follow-up, why questions stopped halfway through, why promises from her carried less weight than they should have and still kept getting believed. The signs hadn't been dramatic. They were practical. Requests to put something in my name because it was easier. Assumptions that access would stay open. Paperwork sent with confidence that it would be returned quickly, no questions attached. Each one small enough to ignore on its own. Love had been the reason given every time. Responsibility, too. Family came last, but wore the right language. The phone buzzed on the counter. Sarah's name came up again. "Where are you?" she asked. "At the house. Alone?" "For now." "Good," she said. "Listen." Keys clicked on her end. She was moving while she talked, which meant something had shifted. "I called the credit company you mentioned," Sarah said. The third-party processor. The name came next, a company I didn't recognize, followed by an email address. They confirmed something interesting, she continued. Your mom called them before the Hawaii trip, not about a charge, about user permissions. The words landed cleanly, not dramatic, just precise. She asked what rights an authorized user would have, Sarah said, and what wouldn't trigger a notification. An email came through while she was talking. The subject line referenced a support ticket. The body confirmed the call, the date, the questions asked. No conclusions, just facts. She was planning, Sarah said, not reacting. The folding chair creaked as weight shifted. Boxes stayed closed. The room didn't change, but something else did. That means this wasn't about Mark, I said. It doesn't matter who it was about, Sarah replied. It was about access. That word reframed more than the trip. It explained the timing, the confidence, the way Linda spoke as if agreement had already been granted. It explained why she wasn't worried about fallout. She didn't think there would be any. The house wasn't neutral ground anymore. Neither was the family conversation. Every discussion happened where Linda had the advantage. History, witnesses, familiarity. None of that worked in my favor. I can't fix this by talking, I said. No, Sarah agreed. You fix it by choosing where to stand. The laptop came out. Not to write another explanation, not to draft a message that would be forwarded or misquoted. A calendar opened instead. Appointments went in one by one. Bank first, legal second. Times that couldn't be reshaped by anyone else's mood. I should tell her, I said. You don't need permission to protect yourself, Sarah said, and you don't need to warn her first. The sale paperwork shifted as the laptop brushed against it. The house was already halfway gone. That part was done. Staying wasn't an option anymore, even if it had been comfortable once. Another message from Linda came through, unread. Then another. The screen stayed dark. The email from the credit company stayed open. The wording was dry and careful. Exactly what it needed to be. Sarah waited while the appointments locked in. You're going to lose things, she said. Access, people, the version of yourself that made this easier. I know. But you'll keep the important part, she added. The confirmation pages loaded slowly. Names, dates, locations. No emotional language anywhere. The last box in the room was taped shut. The marker slid back into a drawer that was already empty. The phone buzzed again, unanswered, as the calendar finalized. 2 appointments confirmed. One with the bank, one with a lawyer. The laptop stayed open on the counter while the house echoed more than before. A new email notification appeared at the corner of the screen, this one automated, confirming receipt of documents. The cursor blinked on the next field, waiting for additional details, while the phone vibrated again beside it, and the appointments stayed locked in place. The first meeting at the bank didn't feel confrontational. It felt procedural. A conference room, a printed agenda, names spelled correctly on tent cards. The representative spoke carefully, choosing neutral phrases that didn't assign intent. Based on the information provided, she said, we're expanding the review. A folder slid across the table. Inside were transaction summaries I hadn't seen before. Small amounts, groceries, gas, online purchases that blended into everyday spending. Dates stretched back months. These weren't flagged initially, she continued. They fell within normal patterns. Normal was the problem. None of it looked dramatic. None of it looked like theft. It looked like permission being tested and widened. The authorization form wasn't a safety net. It was a trial run. The representative pointed to the timeline. The first charge appeared days after the form was signed. Then another, then another. Always modest, always reasonable. The Hawaii charge hadn't been the beginning. It had been the escalation. That message she sent you, the representative added, referring to the one asking to talk, it aligns with the point where spending increased. Control wasn't loud. It was paced. Outside the bank, the phone buzzed with a notification from the escrow company, a reminder about the scheduled transfer tied to the house sale. Funds were expected by end of day. They didn't arrive. A call followed minutes later. "There's been a hold placed on the account," the escrow officer said. "We can't release anything until the review clears." The contract didn't care why. It cared about dates. Linda filed her response that afternoon. The bank forwarded it automatically. A formal complaint. She claimed defamation. She said I'd accused her without proof. She framed herself as a concerned parent being shut out after years of support. The wording was careful, emotional enough to sound real, vague enough to avoid specifics. As a result, all related accounts were frozen, not just the card, everything connected. The system didn't pick sides. It paused the game. The house funds were now inaccessible. Deadlines didn't move. The buyer's agent asked for updates that didn't exist. Each email carried a polite urgency that stacked pressure without adding clarity. Sarah called after the notice came through. She went bigger, she said. She wants this to slow you down. It worked, I said. That's the point. The pattern finished forming then. This wasn't about Mark needing help. It wasn't about a trip. It wasn't even about the wedding. It was about building an exit that didn't require asking later. Access meant independence. Independence meant control. Every small charge had been a brick. Hawaii had been the door. The bank sent another email before the day ended. A case number appeared at the top, followed by language explaining a dual review. Linda and I were now both subjects. Neither of us was cleared. Neither of us was guilty. Everything waited. The escrow officer left a voicemail explaining options that weren't really options. Extensions required approval. Penalties existed. Contracts were indifferent. Linda called that night. The call went unanswered. A voicemail followed. "I don't know why you're doing this," she said. "This could have been handled privately." Another message came through, this one written. "You've made this very hard for everyone." The timing lined up with the freeze notification. The pressure moved in sync with the system. Sarah forwarded something an hour later, a summary from the credit processor confirming Linda's earlier inquiries. Dates, times, questions about thresholds, all logged, all unremarkable on their own. "She planned this longer than we thought," Sarah wrote. The realization didn't come with panic. It came with clarity. The scale was larger, but the shape was familiar. Control expanded quietly until challenged. When challenged, it escalated. The lawyer's office called to confirm the appointment. Forms arrived by email. Requests for documentation followed. Each one narrowed the focus. The escrow officer sent another update. The buyer was getting nervous. A new deadline appeared, bolded. The bank's final message that night carried more weight than the others. It confirmed receipt of the complaint. It confirmed the scope of the investigation. It confirmed that both parties would be reviewed concurrently. The phone stayed face down on the counter. The laptop remained open to a growing folder of files. Screenshots, emails, logs, everything labeled by date. Another voicemail from Linda arrived. This one was quieter. "We need to talk," she said again. "This isn't who you are." The bank notification chimed once more, cutting through the message as it played. A formal notice. Subject line neutral, content precise. An investigation was underway. Access would remain restricted. Further contact would follow. The voicemail cut off mid-sentence as the notification expanded. The message waited, unfinished, while the bank's language filled the screen and the case number locked into place. The conference room was already set when I arrived, water glasses in a straight line, notepads stacked evenly. A small speaker sat in the center of the table, dark and waiting. The bank's representative reviewed a checklist while a legal assistant arranged folders by name. Linda came in last. She smiled the way she always did in public, soft and careful, like she was managing other people's comfort. She took the seat across from me and reached for her purse, then seemed to remember where she was and folded her hands instead. "I don't want this to be uncomfortable," she said. "We're family." No one responded. The bank representative cleared her throat and explained the purpose of the meeting, using words like review, clarification, and temporary measures. No one used the word accusation. When it was my turn, the folder opened without commentary. The first page slid across the table. Call logs, printed and dated. The representative glanced down, then nodded for the next item. Emails followed. Support tickets. Transaction summaries arranged by date. Each document spoke in its own tone, flat and factual. No adjectives, no conclusions. Linda leaned back and crossed her arms. "This is being taken out of context," she said. "These were family conversations." The representative raised a hand gently. "We'll let the materials speak," she said. The next page landed. A timeline. Dates highlighted where spending increased. Notes attached showing when inquiries had been made. Linda laughed once, short and surprised. "This is ridiculous," she said. "You're treating me like a criminal." No one answered. The papers kept moving. When the final document slid forward, Linda leaned in. "That's my signature," she said. "She agreed to it." "That document is noted," the representative replied. "It's not in dispute." Linda turned toward me then, voice lowering. "If you were uncomfortable, you could have said something," she said. "I would have stopped." The apology came next, soft and immediate. "I'm sorry if this hurt you," she added. "That was never my intention." The words floated in the space between us, practiced and incomplete. The representative pressed a button on the speaker in the center of the table. "For the record," she said, "we'll play the referenced call." The audio started without warning. Linda's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "So if I'm listed as an authorized user," the recording said, "what exactly can I do without triggering a notification?" There was a pause, then a reply from a support agent explaining thresholds and alerts. The recording continued. "And she wouldn't see it right away?" "Correct." The room stayed still while the call played to the end. The speaker clicked off. Linda didn't speak. She didn't look at me. Her eyes stayed fixed on the edge of the table. The bank representative tapped her pen once, then spoke. "At this time," she said, "we're issuing a temporary determination." She read from a prepared statement. "Access rights would be adjusted immediately. Authorized user permissions would be revoked. Further use would be considered unauthorized pending final review." The system chimed softly as the update processed. A confirmation appeared on the representative's tablet, then on the speaker's small screen. "Unauthorized use protocol initiated." The wording was neutral. The voice reading it out was even more so. Linda finally looked up. "This is extreme," she said. "You're choosing sides." "We're following procedure," the representative replied. Linda gathered her purse with quick movements, then stopped. "I hope you're happy," she said, directing the comment toward me without making eye contact. "This didn't have to go this way." The representative stood, signaling the meeting's end. Paperwork was collected. Signatures were requested. Linda signed without reading, her pen pressing harder than necessary. A final confirmation printed from the machine near the door. The representative tore it off and handed it across the table. "Access has been removed," she said. "You'll receive written notice shortly." Linda took the paper, folded it once, then twice. Her smile didn't return. The door opened. She stepped out first, heels clicking faster than before. The representative turned to me. "We'll be in touch," she said. The speaker powered down with a soft click. The room reset itself almost immediately. Chairs pushed in, glasses untouched. The phone vibrated in my pocket as the hallway came into view. A notification loaded, plain and brief. "Authorized user removed successfully." Another message followed from the escrow officer, asking if there were any updates yet. The screen stayed lit in my hand while the bank door closed behind me, and the confirmation email finished loading, line by line, as the next step waited to be acknowledged. The notice from the bank arrived first. It wasn't dramatic. It listed changes in bullet points, effective immediately. Authorized access revoked. Linked accounts separated. Future requests routed through formal review. Linda's name appeared once, then disappeared from the system entirely. Mark's call came 2 days later. His voice sounded tight, like he was already rehearsing how to frame it. "She can't stay here anymore," he said. We argued. It got ugly. He didn't ask for help. He just stated it, as if that settled something. "She says you turned everyone against her," he added. "I'm not getting involved." The line went dead without a goodbye. The knock on the door came that afternoon. 2 short raps, then a pause, then one longer knock that suggested urgency without panic. When the door opened, Linda stood on the porch with a rolling suitcase beside her, handle extended like she expected to keep moving. "No matter what," she said before anything else, "I'm still your mother." Behind me, the living room looked wrong, empty in a way that didn't invite explanation. The walls were bare. The echo was faint but noticeable. Through the open doorway, the sign in the front yard was visible in reverse, bold letters facing the street, "For Sale." Linda followed my line of sight and froze. "What is this?" she asked. "The house closed last week," I said. Her grip tightened on the suitcase handle. The question that followed came out slower. "Where are you supposed to go?" The answer stayed simple. "Not here." Linda stepped forward anyway, 1 foot crossing the threshold as if that rule didn't apply. "You can't do this," she said. "This is still my place, too. I helped you get started." A folder sat on the entry table, already addressed. 1 envelope rested on top. It didn't look official. No return address, just her name. "That's for you," I said. Linda opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single card, thick paper, clean print. An invitation to a small gathering the following month. Friends, a few co-workers. No assigned seating, no family section, no blank chair waiting to be filled. "There's no mistake," she said, flipping it over. "My name isn't on anything else." "That's right." She looked up then, eyes sharp. "So that's it? You're cutting me out?" The suitcase tipped slightly as she shifted her weight. "This trip can't be postponed," I said. The words landed exactly as they had before. No raised voice, no emphasis, just placement. Linda stared, searching for something to argue with. Nothing followed. The phrase had already done its work. "You're being cruel," she said finally. "I'm being consistent." Silence stretched between us, filled only by the sound of a car passing on the street. Linda reached for the doorframe, then pulled her hand back. "You'll regret this," she said. "One day you'll need me." The door closed before a response could form. The lock turned once, then again, each click firm and final. Outside, the suitcase wheels rattled briefly, then moved away. The sign in the yard stayed where it was. The phone buzzed as I stepped back into the empty room. A confirmation from the bank appeared, this one short. "Your account is now independent." Another message followed from the escrow officer, thanking me for closing out the file. No questions, no follow-up. The last box was lifted into the trunk an hour later. The house key went into a labeled envelope addressed to the new owner. The mailbox was empty. At the bank branch across town, a clerk confirmed the new account details and asked if I wanted to keep the old contact information on file. "No," I said. She nodded and typed, efficient and polite. Outside, traffic moved the same way it always did. Nothing paused for closure. That was fine. The drive out of the city took longer than expected. Construction rerouted traffic. A navigation alert suggested an alternate route. It didn't ask why. At a rest stop outside the city limits, the phone lit up again. A missed call from Linda. No voicemail this time. The number stayed on the screen for a moment, then disappeared as settings changed. New passwords, new contact preferences. Each confirmation came back clean. The car merged back onto the highway. The city receded in the mirror without ceremony. A calendar reminder chimed for the gathering next month, already accepted by the people who mattered. The road stretched ahead, uninterrupted, as the last notification faded and the car continued forward, steady, without slowing.